Welcome back, tribe. Have one here from Serpensa. Who are China's nowhere girls?
Just who are China's nowhere girls? Withdrawn, they think very little of themselves. Shunned by society and under constant pressure to conform. Usually unemployed or earning a pittance, their prospects are non-existent. So why bother? They've turned pessimistic, lethargic, and have given in to hopelessness and despair. China loves to come up with these little catchphrases to explain away huge swaths of people. You've heard of leftover women, of course. These are women who, even though they're about to turn 30, have the audacity to have remained single. In China, that's just unacceptable, and they're treated like garbage, deemed of little to no value to society. But suddenly, now we have another emerging group of women, the nowhere girls. These are young women in their prime who refuse to marry and have all but given up on life. Why?
Women going their own way in China. Boys, they've got you beat. There's millions of them.
Do they exist? And why are their numbers growing so rapidly in China? Unless they're part of a wealthy family or connected to the government, women have a rough time in China. There's a weird dynamic in Chinese society. You know when you hear people in the West complain about misogyny, toxic masculinity, male privilege, and all that other stuff? Well, at least in the West there's some recourse. At least there are laws in place. But in China, it truly is a country of misogyny, toxic masculinity, and male privilege. I mean, just look at their government. See any women there? Nope. Other than the ones serving tea, of course. The lack of sexual harassment laws, the fact that the woman who tried to raise awareness and start China's #MeToo movement was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in jail, and the fact that women are forced into prostitution and often trafficked and sold are just some of the uncomfortable truths that prove that China is not a friendly place if you're a woman.
$20, dude. So how much? $20. Let's go. That's insane. That is nuts. Again, remember, this is all underpinned with economic woes. Young people in China are super unemployed. Like, what is their unemployment rate? I think it was so bad that China was refusing to release the statistics on unemployment, which they were used to doing every month, if I recall correctly. Let's see. So it says China's economic woes deepen with sky-high youth unemployment. In that article, 14 days ago, it's 17% in July, highest since the new system began in December. And, just like in America, the rates that they're reporting aren't correct. They're probably using some criteria that doesn't envelop everybody that would normally apply. So we're saying bare minimum, the government is reporting 17, but it's probably more than double. So we're talking, let's just say 30 to be safe. So 30% of the youth are unemployed. I don't know what wages look like in China, but it makes sense that there is this, it's not women going their own way. They have no economic potential in this country for a young woman, which he describes because they're going to get the lowlier jobs. It's most of the men earning. And then you have the other side of the coin of the women that do choose career. They then become leftover women because in order to study, get your advanced degree, get a job, get ahead in the corporate culture, you have to slave away and sacrifice family. What does that mean? You wake up one day, you're 30 plus 35, and you can't have a family anymore because the quote diamond bachelors don't want you. All the guys that are above 30 with assets, with good paying jobs, they're looking at women that are in their 20s. They are having similar problems that we're having here in the West, but theirs is not rooted in feminism whatsoever. We're seeing that this is an issue systemically with corporate culture. And I've said this a million times, feminism, no feminism, communist society versus capitalist or democratic. The corporate structure, corporatism, is what's destroying the family unit, is what's sucking up all the economic potential from young people and has absolutely destroyed their ability to buy a home, raise a family. No one wants to believe it, though. The morons in the West will keep blaming, it's all women's fault, it's all feminism's fault. Okay, explain that shit then in China. Explain that shit in Japan. Explain why. In a place like this where the Me Too chick got jailed for 5 years, subverting state power, where they've banned feminism, they're undergoing the same problems and are approaching a population collapse. Go ahead. Explain it to me. Other than we both use the corporate structure in our day-to-day lives, multinational corporations. Corporations is the only common factor in these societies that are on the opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of economic and personal freedom. This is crazy.
I know there will be some people that think this is a good thing, but I assure you that it is
Who?
not.
Who?
A government that truly suppresses women's rights and treats them as second-class citizens is a government that truly suppresses men's rights too, and the rights of all citizens. So, let's start with job prospects. If you're one of the hundreds of millions of impoverished girls in China, you have very little chance of getting a good job. Even with an education, you're looking at low-end factory work, or if you're lucky, you can make it big as an electronics recycler in Shenzhen, or grab some very low-paying office work. These lower-paying jobs often require incredibly long hours and harsh working conditions. And at the end of the day, the money made is hardly worth the effort. If you have the option to just float along as a nowhere girl, then why not? Keep your eye out for these nowhere girls when you're in China. You often see them idling away, either in an internet cafe, on a street corner. You might catch a glimpse of them through a doorway. Women who come from lower-class families, and to be honest, women in general, are not treated with the greatest amount of respect in China. They're treated as beasts of burden, as birthing machines, and as currency, sold off for a bride price to the highest bidder at a young age and expected to instantly give birth to ensure family prospects and stability. So, as a young woman, you can start to quickly realize that pursuing your dreams or goals in life are first not financially viable, as your job prospects suck and China's economy is declining rapidly, and secondly, not socially acceptable. Since you're expected to work, but also expected to get married in your early 20s, you're expected to give birth, and worst of all, you're expected to take care of your in-laws and their often overly spoilt son, your husband. Of course, this isn't always the situation. It's not always bad, but it's not for everyone. So rather than embrace the struggle and the stress of what's expected of you, why not pass the days as a nowhere girl? You see, leftover women have options. They're usually the ones that focused on their career and are successful, affording them options like the current trend of these 30-something Chinese women now studying postgraduate degrees in the West. They have the money, so they can escape societal pressures this way and forge ahead with their life and relationships free of their labels and pressures.
Absolutely not true. You're trading one for the other. They're going to be miserable like we've seen all the other leftover women. It's not something that a woman has a choice in. You pick family or you pick career because your career is going to demand more time away from your family. So then you'll be shitty at being a mother. This is what's wrong with the corporate culture. It's not built in a sustainable way for the populations to increase. Corporations are subverting culture in nations entirely for short-term profit. I'm telling you guys, these leftover women, as educated as they are, as much assets as they're collecting, mean absolutely nothing to the men that are still available that would be on the level they're searching for. So they're looking for men with their education or higher, their earning potential and higher, and all those men that are still single are looking for women that are 10 years younger than them. Because your job title, your career, none of this shit matters. I want kids. Don't care what you have to say. Don't care what you've achieved, what school you into. Are you young? Are you pretty? End of story. We've seen it plenty of times from the leftover women video. That's all most men care for. The dude is 30 plus. He busted his ass. He worked really hard to get that position at whatever company he's working for. He's attained a ton of assets. It's taken him decades. He sacrificed everything. You think he's going to waste it on another woman that's 38, 39 because she has assets too and a job, and she needs now in vitro hundreds of thousands of dollars, struggling to get pregnant, or pregnancies are at a risk for having problems with the kids, all the complications medically that could happen. Why? When he could just go 10 years younger. A lot of the dudes in China are actually going overseas now, like Thailand, Philippines, and they're going on to the Vietnam, all these other Asian nations, and just grabbing wives from there because, one, it deals with the one-child policy shortages, and two, it deals with the issue for men of finding a young and pretty woman that they can't in China here because the numbers are skewed or the demands are too high, or you run into the nowhere girl or leftover woman. Like, that's your choice. Okay.
In mainland China, nowhere girls don't have this luxury. They're young, they're broke, they're pessimistic, and they're forgotten. I hope this video has helped shine a light on this very large and growing segment of China's society. I truly believe that every single human being has worth and value, and I am...
Yeah, but let's be honest. We'll say the quiet part out loud. Young, broken, ugly, because any beautiful woman that's young would get a man, unless she's completely spoiled and entitled, and she drives them away. But if they have any semblance of beauty, they'll get snatched up. Men don't care about any of that, being young and broke and all this. You come from a lower class family. No shits will be absolutely given for that. See what some of the comments say. Love your content. I noticed similar issues in Lagos, Nigeria when I visited a few years ago. Also heard about it in Nairobi, Kenya. A lot of these underdeveloped countries have the same problems. This says, I don't understand. Isn't there a massive surplus of young males in China due to the one-child policy? Shouldn't young women be cherished and chased in China by all those men? It says there were people that predicted that, and it hasn't turned out that way. And many Chinese men have turned to other countries in search of a bride, many finding them in places, this guy says various African nations, but we'll go with close by Asian nations most likely. If you know anything about China, it's their view on black people. So not too good. I worked in China for a few months way back when things were booming. The lack of charity and mercy of that culture was palpable. I could feel it, occasionally see it. Everything was intense competition. Can only imagine what the Workers' Party brought to Hong Kong. Yeah, going back to what I was saying earlier, the fact that their culture and their society and their customs and norms are so different from ours here in the West, and yet they're still having the same problems, even more extreme actually, because we're still celebrating a boss babe, strong, independent woman. Society here tells women that they can chase a career, that they can be 40 plus and then get married and have kids. And the biological reality is can't. And in China, they make no fuss about that. They're straight to the point. They tell you how it is, very pragmatic people. And we're seeing that despite our cultures being so different, our ways of life, we have the same exact problem. Young people, unemployment, no jobs that pay well, can't afford a family, can't afford a house, can't afford anything, hardly can feed yourself. Job opportunities and prospects are dwindling. Inflation is creeping up and absolutely murdering any amount of raise you could get from the job you're currently in. And then they want you to have kids and get married and support a wife and stay at home on top of that and watch the kids. And how do you do this? Regardless if we earn different money from them, it's a one-to-one comparison in terms of cost of living. So they have the same issues we do. What is it then? What is the singular factor here that's common across all these societies where the nuclear family, the ability for young people to start families, is being simultaneously destroyed before our very eyes? Ask yourselves that. Because a lot of dudes in the West, they only have the tunnel vision for Western society collapsing, but they don't see the East Asian societies collapsing either. We can talk about South Korea's horrendous birth rate, Japan's birth rate, China's birth rate, all the collapse of these high technological civilizations, and it's not feminism, especially China. China's one of the big examples, but what do they all have in common? What is the system in place that has enriched these countries, but at the expense of their long-term survivability? Yeah. Once you guys start digging deeper into stuff like this, you'll start to see that it's not the ideologies, it's not our ways of life, it's not the culture, it's actually singular point of failure, which is economics. And once you understand that economics are the problem with everything, it's the root cause, then you start to point the fingers at who is passing legislation, who controls the economics of a country, who buys politicians, who has billions of dollars to donate unlimited amount of funds to and subvert the interest of its citizens. Think about it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and we'll see you on the next one.